on, for, and with practitioners. Media Linguistics and Transdisciplinarity. Welcome to my presentation. The roadmap takes us from research frameworks to research objects, to methodology, analysis and findings, and conclusion. A classical roadmap. Research frameworks. By applied linguistics, we understand an interdisciplinary field of research and practice that helps us identify, analyze, and solve practical problems of language and communication that matter in social contexts. Here you can see 5 research frameworks that easily combine with the rationale of applied linguistics. For the purpose of this presentation, I focus on 2 of them. Ethnography helps us understand participants' perspectives, and this is a precondition for transdisciplinary action research. If you can understand participants' perspectives, you can also help them solve practical problems in a sustainable way, and this is what transdisciplinary action research does. The research object in this presentation is the digital literacy shift from focused writing to writing by the way in 4 phases. By focused writing, we understand a localized, coherent, solitary, albeit collaborative endeavor. People sit down and write. By writing by the way, Troy Hicks and I understand a ubiquitous, fragmented, and socially dialogic activity. People synchronize knowledge, they share emotions, and they maintain identities from any location at all the times throughout the day. Another concept that matters in this presentation is the writing phase. On a micro level, we understand writing phase as a temporal segment of a writing process that is dominated by particular stable writing patterns. Phases on the macro level, however, extend one individual writing process, of course. Here the concept of phase applies to stages in one's career, in one's lifespan, or even phases in the development of a domain like journalism. Based on 25 years of writing research, we can say now that journalism went through 4 phases of a shift from focused writing to writing by the way. In the 90s, journalists, what they did was mainly focused writing, as lonely wolves in their offices. Around 2000, they started to browse by the way, in addition to focused writing. So while writing, they went back to the internet to access new sources, for example. This was not possible before the internet. At that time, mostly research was done before writing. Now the 2 activities intertwine. 2010, writing by the way gains even more importance, and 2020, writing by the way dominates journalism. Journalists advertise their pieces, they negotiate with their sources using social media, writing by the way all the time. The methodology of our research helps us investigate real-life text processing. We want to find out what people do when they write and why they do it the way they do. Our toolkit is called Extended Progression Analysis. It's a multi-method approach. It's non-invasive, more or less. It combines ethnographically based context analysis with activity recording and with retrospective verbal protocols. These retrospective verbal protocols, they are cue-based. The writers are invited to view the recording of their process and to tell us what they did and why they did it. By doing so, they provide researchers with information about why certain decisions are made during the writing process and about their awareness of what they are doing and why. We have applied this methodology to investigate journalistic writing in a series of research projects starting from 1995. The journalist's name is MD. We'll have a look at the micro level, writing a single text. We'll have a look at the macro level, writing across MD's professional lifespan. Both levels are part of the workplace ethnography of this journalist. She started as a print journalist, but then switched to TV, and she had good reasons to do so. Let's have a look at this progression graph showing the movement of the focus of attention of the writer. The red dots are revisions MD made during writing. A revision is an insertion or a deletion, meaning that the writer adds something to her emerging texts or deletes something from this text. On the x-axis you can see these revisions in temporal order. So this is the beginning of the writing process and this is the end of the writing process. But by and large, this is a very linear progression. So the journalist starts with the beginning of her text and more or less ends with the end, the last paragraph of her text, going back to revise something in the middle. But by and large, it's really linear, this progression graph. The retrospective verbal protocol gives us some ideas what the journalist wanted to achieve when writing this way. Here, for example, she says, I would like to start with her biography. And this is what she does throughout the story. She tells the biography from the beginning to the end. The biography of her hero of the story, an individual that has to go through certain challenges. She tells this story in a linear way. And now let's have a look at the macro development. In 1997, she approached the research team. Her leading question was, why do I suddenly get stuck while most other stories flow into the keys so easily? Most stories are those she told in a linear way, just like this one. And she always got stuck when she tried to break up this pattern for a new dramaturgy of her text. However, despite the coaching, she gave up because she realized that everything she really wanted to do and she was good at was telling stories the linear way. Indeed, in 2010, she won the first prize for one of these linear stories, and in 2016 again, she succeeded with a life story told in this linear way. And these are only examples of media coverage of her success with her pattern. Summary of this case: MD first and repeatedly scrutinized her own limitations. But then she kept these limitations because they were also strengths. Her pattern: telling stories of difficult lives along timelines from top to bottom. She decided to deepen instead of broaden her knowledge about focused writing. Having a plan and telling a story, and it's always the same plan. The biography of a hero told in an interesting way, building up suspense, but following the linear path. In her career, in her lifespan as a journalist, herself, she followed a linear path towards the optimal working environment. She left print media when focused writing was given up there for the writing by the way, for negotiating with sources during writing, for hypertext approaches. So she left this print environment for TV news first. And when even TV news started to be split up into bits and pieces, she went on to documentaries where she could develop linear stories telling entire biographies in detail in an appealing way. Conclusion: understanding change in journalistic writing. Combining applied linguistics with ethnography and transdisciplinarity enables researchers to identify, analyze, and solve the socially relevant problem of dealing with a digital literacy shift in the profession of journalism. Research can identify such cases, can understand their practices of sense-making in writing, in one single piece, but also across the lifespan, and can their tacit knowledge, their tacit good practices of writing across the lifespan. The measures based on these findings for researchers do investigate writing patterns also on macro scales, macro levels of lifespans. This is interesting to see how people develop and how they succeed in the professional world. Measures for professional education reframe the idea of writers' limitations as a potential driver of expertise and long-term success in niches. MD is an example of finding her way, of becoming a star in journalism just because she stayed with her pattern instead of following the big trends. Measures for society at large: learn to worship apparent standstill as positive deviance and as a driver to the next but one future. We already can see in journalism that people who are able to write strong stories in a focused way are gaining back market presence. It's not only writing by the way, it's writing by the way too, but not only. On, for and with practitioners. If media linguistics and transdisciplinarity collaborate, findings can be exciting, especially in long-term research. Thank you.